Good morning, everyone, and welcome. This is Joe Scarice, co-founder and co-host of the Creative Birth Strategy House and podcast here live every Saturday morning, 8 a.m., and every Sunday morning, 9:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. We're here to provide very much focused on creating an opportunity for strategy, discussion, networking, um, insight, updates, and we try to tackle every single weekend different subjects that hopefully impact your bottom line in understanding real estate endeavors, real estate opportunities, and building out your network. I want to thank our sponsors first before we get into our discussion this morning. I want to thank Perkatech, Mr. Yardell Perkins, who is the backbone to this great podcast and the creator of a lot of the social media analytics to this. We are now celebrating our 64th episode on our podcast, and you can find all of it at creativebirdstrategies.com, which is the link above. I'd like to thank MB Capital, the unsecured business line of credit program that provides unsecured business lines for investors nationwide, whether it's commercial credit cards, commercial lines. We set them up to about $150,000 to $200,000 to get you set and ready in regards to um, unsecured business lines to leverage into deals. I want to thank Realty 411, Miss Linda Pelagas, in regards to being part of uh, Realty 411 and providing us national exposure from her national events throughout the country, as well as her national publication of Realty 411. And then I'd like to thank Lenmark Capital, which is an asset-based lender nationwide, providing DSCR, fixed to rent, fixed to flip, new construction, multifamily, and mixed use financing for real estate professionals and entrepreneurs throughout the country. So we're going to get into our discussion today. And also, you could find these articles um, on my LinkedIn, my Facebook, my threads, Instagram, everything. All these articles are posted every week, the week of the subject matter at hand. So, like I put a write up on this as well to complement, what the discussion is going to be this morning and tomorrow morning as well. So they're out there. If you're not connected to me on uh, LinkedIn, please reach out. Please connect with me, and so I could put that together for you and make sure you can see all the articles that we update every week. So first, before we dive into our subject today, which is land and development tips and build to rent and spec build, we had a fantastic wind down first Friday in Philadelphia in Old City. I want to thank Mr. Yardell Perkins as a co-sponsor. It was a great event. We had close to, I'd say, about 50 people. It was wine, snacks, and we talked about real estate. And I made sure people were getting to talk to one another and networking and talking about the art of networking. Talked about our upcoming mastermind event that we're going to have the second Monday of every month at my offices, which we had a great event last Thursday night, and that had about 75 people. And it just was a great mix of people. We had some wellness there. We had chair massages going on. We had some light music. The sponsors were fantastic and we're excited about the future endeavors that working together. We'll probably set up a holiday party, probably. So if you want to think about coming to Philadelphia and hang out, definitely we're looking at the December 20th as our holiday mixer and party. That'll be on December 20th in Philadelphia in Old City. So if you wanted to fly in or drive into the event, by all means, let's set something up so you could be there. Last time we had a holiday party, we had close to like 100 people there. It was a lot of fun. So let's talk about what happened this week. A lot of things going on, right? Job reports, job reports, job reports. Job reports does nothing to resolve the Fed rate cut debate. At first glance, this past morning's jobs report suggested a modest but clearly defined increase in the likelihood of the 50 basis point rate cut from the Fed in 2 weeks. I personally think headline non-farm payrolls came in at 142,000 to 160,000 forecast. In addition, the past 2 months were revised down by a total of 144,000. that leaves kind of a weird margin. I don't really believe anything they're saying right now because they've made such changes in labor uh, uh, announcements. But all I could tell you is it doesn't look good, and it definitely looks like the rate fell down to about 6.38 base rate. We're going to be dropping our rates Monday, Tuesday. We were supposed to update it yesterday, but I think there's such volatility on the 5-year Treasury. I think we're going to wait out till Monday or Tuesday. But I could see us getting down our base rate down to 6.25, 6.125. It could get really bullish next week. It's going to be a very interesting market for that. So that was an update there. Homeless listings are up more than 60% in a lot of the major cities. 60%. We're talking regionally, active listings rose 46% in the South, 35.7% in the West, 23.8% in the Midwest, and 15.1% in the Northeast. There's still some stubbornness right now in regards to what do you call negotiation on listings, but I'm seeing definitely some changes there uh, in inventory. Some of the bigger markets that are having increased inventory: San Diego, Miami, Seattle, and Denver. Regionally, yeah. So again, Florida's having some serious, and Florida's kind of a great indicator of where the market is going typically, whether it's the condo market in Florida or Jersey Shore or the inventory increases in Florida. It's going to get very interesting on that. Um, I'll be watching that pretty deeply. So, like I said, rates kind of leveled off at about 6.27, the 30-year fixed. So I'm thinking the commercial rate's going to be somewhere between 6 and 6.25 as of next week. I can't put a crystal ball to it, but I think that's what's going to kind of what we're going to see. Some additional articles that I saw: at-risk counties experience higher unemployment rates, foreclosures, and more. Let me see what information's here. Kings County, Brooklyn, New York. Number 2, Riverside County, California. Number 3, Washington County, St. George, Utah. Number 4, Richmond County, New York, Staten Island. Number 5, Passaic County, New York City. High percentages of most at-risk markets right now. So there's a lot of there's an article I put out today, and that'll give you a whole global. Some other markets you want to keep an eye on: Tangaguaca Parish, Louisiana; Peoria County, Illinois; Lake County, Indiana; Gary, Indiana; or New Orleans and Dayton, Ohio have some high percentages as well. And last but not least, I think that's it. We got on articles. So let's dive in to build to rent. Build to rent has been creating a lot of momentum in the last, several years because of the real estate inventory that's just lacking. But now with this influx of inventory, it could shift a lot of mindset. But I think that new construction is not going to slow down. I think it's going to shift from owner occupied to non-owner occupied. You're going to see some major changes in in um, uh, in the new construction space. I think you're going to see changes in the square footage to the property, the type of finishes on the property. Um, you're definitely going to see a cost perspective change in the build to rent environment. And when developing real estate, build to rent and speculative building, spec building involves very difficult strategies and objectives and risk profiles. Build to rent, you really need to understand the site selection and market research, such as urban areas, what makes more sense. Now, if you're going to go urban, it's definitely going to go more toward that affordable housing space. If you're going to go suburban, it could be a blend of the two, depending on the location. Demographic analysis is going to be very important, and then the supply and demand. Like, what is the demand for rentals in your market? How quick are they popping off the market? And will a renter prefer that new construction, that more eat, work, and live environment compared to a single family home of their own kind of feel? The design amenities, definitely a flexible unit layout. There's definitely amenities that come to build to rent. And then there's the technology integration, to new construction, and then there's a lot more money for new construction right now than ever before. Like I have plenty of money to put to work for new construction on build to rent all day. I have a lot of money for DSCR and fix to rent, fix to flip, but I have a lot of money right now being allocated for new construction. There's a lot of institutional financing for that as well, for either phase development. And there's also tax advantages that you need to really start working on and understanding. But you need to put together a very good operations and management. You need to put together professional property management and understand the tenant retention and the long-term hold perspective to it. So real quick, Steve, I can't get you up for some reason into the into the room. So leave the room and come back out, and I'll try to get you back up. For some reason, it's not letting me let you on here for whatever reason. So let me just reset this real quick. We try to get Steve Franco on here, and give me 1 minute. So we'll see how that works. We'll get him back on in a few minutes. For whatever reason, we couldn't get him in. So let's start off with Mr. Joseph Martella this morning. Joseph, good morning and welcome. Thank you for coming to our event last night. I really appreciate you coming out. What's your thoughts to build to rent and land development? You're more of a single family guy, but what's your thoughts on new construction? Do you find that as a competitive piece to what you're doing as a landlord? Is it going to impact anything that you're thinking? Are you going to buy properties maybe near new construction projects? What's your thoughts there this morning, and good morning?
Good morning, Joe. It was good seeing you last night. Great event. Had a good time. And there were a couple other people that actually admitted to being your friend, which is impressive.
It's absolutely, it was quoted and stated in public. That was amazing.
Yeah. I think all those people need to get their heads checked. But no, listen, this built to rent definitely was something the developers had to do because it just wasn't making sense to build these big units and then sell them off, right? And I don't know why they didn't turn them into condos, but whatever the case is, built to rent. I mean, I'm looking at there's a complex that was built up in Cherry Hill by me. They're asking high rents. They're calling them luxury rentals, right? But they're asking very, very high rents on these properties. $3,300 for a 2-bedroom. So I mean, I don't really think that there's competition for me or there's an impact for me because I'm in the single family home space. I'm offering, usually more bedrooms. I'm offering a backyard, front yard, private space, driveway, right? I'm offering a tenant the ability to have a home, whereas that's an apartment building. I just don't get those concepts, but I also don't see those rentals flying off the market either. What they're getting for a 2-bedroom per unit, or asking, I should say, I'm getting for a 3-bedroom single family home. So, I mean, yeah, I don't think that there's that much competition for me where they're causing people, they're helping the housing crisis, if you will, that we like to use that word all the time. But I don't think that they're making a dent in it. They're targeting a different type of client.
So my concern here, and I'll give some additional thoughts. Cost of new construction strategies, they're reducing the square footage. One way to dramatically reduce cost to just reduce the square footage of the entire home or the townhome or the condo, whatever the classification that they're going to call it, right? They're going to choose it. They're going to choose a different type of stock design. They're going to reduce lineal feet. They're going to opt for simple roof systems, drywall, use different type of drywall and moldings and everything for the interior, more modest kitchens. Don't take a bath on your bath. So it's going to be more stand up, bath. They're going to avoid change orders, dramatically. You know what I mean? My concern with the new construction stuff, though, I think there's going to be these false expectations for high rent. And when the rental market gets flooded because now you have a higher inventory and investors are buying more properties, there's more rentals out there. They're gonna have to steer a lot of these new construction toward affordable housing. and follow the Fed numbers on affordable housing. So I know you have some affordable housing renters. Is there that major difference in the market rent to the housing affordability, the low income housing type of renter? Is the rent any difference? Is there a disparage in the difference there?
No, it's no difference. I mean, actually, I would say Section 8 is actually higher than what the regular renters are paying. So I would say Section 8 is driving up the prices more than anything else.
Interesting. You know, build to rent has some great pros and cons, right? So we'll talk about the pros first, and then we'll kind of go into the cons real quick. There's obviously a rising demand for single family rentals. That's number one. Lower tenant turnover, higher rent yields. I mean, there's 30-year money out there in the late sixes, right? I mean, you could hold out 30 years making four or $500 a month per unit. That's a great return and allow the units to appreciate. You could always sell them off down the road. There's definitely a lower maintenance demand short term in the first 5 years. There's a lot more professional property management available in that environment. There's a lot of value added benefits. Now, some of the cons is the high upfront costs and development risks. There's a competition with institutional investors, delayed returns, regulatory and legal changes. So you really got to know what the local community and the state is looking at, what type of tax credits are going to be kicking back to monetize your debt on that property. Limited historical performance data. So these are some things you really need to think about. And these are three questions if you want to get into new construction or build to rent, that whoever you're going to partner with initially, or it's going to be you need to answer these six questions very precisely to your lender for land and for development of the property, and then the build to rent. And we'll talk about the land development piece in a minute. But 5 questions any lender is going to ask you because they need a number. Okay. How many flips have you sold in the last 4 years? How many rehabs have you retained as a rental in the last 4 years, meaning a BRRRR? How many rentals have you acquired in the last 4 years? How many ground up construction and sold in the last 4 years? How many ground up construction retained as rental in the last 4 years? And the last question, property rehab completed and sold as GC for third party investor in the last 4 years. These are very specific questions. They come with a zero or a number. And you need to understand which one that is. And it's very important because that's going to be the difference of leverage on a new construction project. So what's leverage? So if you already own the land and you bought it cash and you paid for all the third party out of pocket, meaning architectural designs, permits, zoning, survey. So now you bought the land for 100 grand and your third party costs are 10 to 20 grand. So you're into it for $120,000, right? Just basic numbers. Let's just keep it that easy, right? And then you look at the new construction cost of 250. Okay, so you got a 120 over here, you got 250 over here. What are we doing here? So, and what's the after repair value? The after repair value is, let's just use a very conservative number, $400,000. Is that fair to say? Sure, no problem. So what's 70% of 400,000? It's 280, right? 280,000. So you got the number over there. So you got 120, you got 250, you got 280 as your max LTV on after repair value, and your after repair value is 400. I take 75% of the 120 because that's what you have in out of pocket. That's for somebody that already owns the land. I'm going to take 75. I'm going to take 75% of that. So let's take 75% of 120, right? And I'm being a little aggressive on that, but let's just use that number. Let's use 65%. and that's $78,000. I'm going to take $78,000 that's sitting out there, all right? And then I'm going to give you 90% of 250. So what's 90% of 250? Let's do that real quick. That's 225. I'm going to apply 70 something thousand, 78,000, take a portion of that to make up the difference of your 250, and then I'm going to escrow 12 months of interest only payments so you don't go into mortgage shock during the time of the construction. And then there'll be some closing costs, and then I might be able to do a draw for you initially to get things going. But you're going to probably have to have some of the money for the first draw for yourself as well. And the beauty of this piece is you can nearly get 100% financing on the construction if you already own the land and have the property shovel ready. Now, it's a little different on when you have to buy the land and have the new construction. So to buy the land like a developer, now I'm going to be 75% on the purchase and third party, and I'm going to probably stay at 90% on the new construction piece. So you're going to have a little money on the new construction, you're going to have a little bit of money on the purchase and third party. And then I'm going to look at that at 70% loan to value on the after repair value. So there's a little more money in if you're buying it initially. Okay. So that's the basic math to new construction and land development. Now, I know a lot of people that just buy land, develop it, meaning getting it shovel ready, and then sell the shovel ready project off to an investor. That's land speculation. I like that because a lot of people don't want to get dirty. They don't want to go through the permit process and the architectural designs and the renderings and getting the place with the posts in the ground. So there's an excitement to that where you created a value and you could sell that shovel ready to someone else to just build. And that happens often as well. I see a lot more land play going on in the market than ever before. So that's another way of looking at it. Melissa, good morning and welcome. Brief overview, who you are, what you do, and thoughts to our discussion, land and development tips, build to rent and spec build.
Hey, good morning, Clubhouse. Good morning, Joe and Joseph. Thank you for having me up. My name is Melissa King, owner-operator at One Last Eye LLC Virtual Assistant Services here in West Michigan. I offer realty, bookkeeping, office management services to small businesses and entrepreneurs. I'm also a state of Michigan licensed referral agent and notary. I do a lot of bookkeeping for real estate investors. Also a member of a local Property Owners Association. I'm actually celebrating my 15th anniversary in business this year, and I'm going to be buying food for the meeting Monday night. So I thought that was an easy way to do that and get out there and celebrate things. Land development. I did a little research on Google before I came on here. And I did find, if anybody's interested, 3 cities in Michigan that are offering free land. Muskegon is offering, this is a little more industrial. If you want to, they want to bring jobs in. Of course, Detroit made this list. That's probably going to be a little more related to the topic of today, to build down there. You know, Detroit's always looking to get rid of that blight and help people. So I would look into Detroit if you were interested in Michigan. Another one, which I thought was interesting, was Marquette, which is north. So if you really like skiing, hiking, riding, fishing, kayaking, that was an interesting one. They are offering single-family home incentives for people to build over the next 18 months. So lots around a quarter acre. If all you want to do is live in a tiny house, like a lot of the millennials, and even my daughter says they love the tiny house idea, and you want to go out and play, Marquette in Michigan might also be something that you want to look into. So this is a great topic, Joe. I love the shovel ready idea. I've mentioned that before on another clubhouse. I think that's a great idea. Start with the vacant land and build up from there. I actually met someone over the weekend, Labor Day weekend, who already did some land development south of the airport here in Grand Rapids. So I need to get in touch with him and pick his brain a little bit more. I mean, this guy has no real estate background at all. It just kind of fell into his lap, and I'm like, how is this possible? But he does know a lot of people. So I mean, networking obviously gets you what you need sometimes, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, a lot of people want to do the new construction thing, Melissa. It looks sexy, but they don't really know what goes into it. They don't like when I ask people like, "Have you done the third party work on the project?" And they look at me and they're like, "What are you talking about third party?" I'm like, "Do you have architectural designs? Do you have permits? Do you have variances? Do you have surveys done?" And they're like, "Oh no, I just want a new construction loan." It just goes right over their head. I mean, there's a literacy issue in understanding what the steps are from you know from the start go. I mean, like they think it's like a rehab loan. Oh, I'll just put a repair number in my head and that's how it's gonna all work. I just don't understand like why the people think that way. When it comes to new construction. I mean, am I missing something? Because I mean, there's a lot of things you got to take into account.
There is, and it's the education portion. I mean, when I started out in real estate years ago, I was lucky enough to be working in an office where they started a joint venture to redo Friendar Shopping Center. That's in East Lansing, Michigan. And I learned a lot from that. And it is, there's a lot that goes into it. I mean, they had to raise buildings, do their construction drawings, and this was an already functioning mall, and they still had to do all of that. So that is definitely, I mean, the devil's in the details, always, isn't it?
Well, I always like scratch my head and say, hey, what am I missing here? Did I miss something in the conversation? Because there's a lot to understand the estimate to the cost of a new build, right? You got to determine your floor plans. You got to determine how a customer plans and can affect the cost. You got to know your market, right? You got to learn how to pre-design options so you could save money, right? You got to find the right builder. The builder might be your partner. So you really need to identify the right builder. Do they have the financial wherewithal to sustain what you're doing here? I mean, are they going to be a good partner? Because in the beginning, as a new construction developer, you need to really know your developer and you really need to be able to grow with them. And are they going to be able to take on your project and still support their living elsewhere with work? And do they have the right staff, right? And you got to get a really good idea. What are the new construction costs to build per square foot? That's really, really important. Have you taken a course on this? Have you gone to your local builders association, gone to some events and see if it works for you? Maybe new construction doesn't work for you. Maybe you want to stick with the rehab. You understand your style, the quality, the features, refer to relation to estimating your construction costs, no different than rehab costs. So you really need to kind of dive into this, and you got to leave room in your budget to accommodate any additional construction costs and understand how time of the year can affect your cost. That's another thing. I don't think people realize. I mean, when things get cold, you ain't doing shit out there. Everything slows down. Everything. If you're going to have to do exterior work, it's very, very important to understand the timing of things. Like you're not going to be breaking ground in Denver, Colorado in December or January. It's damn cold. It ain't happening. Be proactive to avoid cost overruns. These are some key components to identify in your contract with your new build. Understanding realistic allowances, how you define heated or unheated spaces, how a garage or basement might be included, handled in the contract. If the land is included in the square footage costs, liability insurance costs, utility connection costs, septic system costs, driveway costs, sidewalk costs, landscaping costs, subcontractor costs, green material costs, inflation for delayed build. There's a lot of things you need to understand. What are the big ticket items are material cost, labor cost, permit fees, site preparation, foundation, framing, exterior finishes, major systems, interior finishing, final details, the size, number of stories, the shape, the type of roof, the appliances, special design features. You need to create a budget. You need to understand how you're buying the land. You got to choose the correct construction method, custom, semi-custom, collaborative, spec, develop plans or designs. You got to obtain permits and inspections, obtain construction insurance, begin construction, understanding what final inspection and certificate of occupancy is, if there's landscaping needed. What are some typical questions that you need to ask yourself in new construction? Is it more expensive to buy or build a home? What's the average cost, average price per square foot? What are the key components of a new build contract? How can custom plans affect your cost? These are things you need to really dive into when you're developing and building to rent or spec to build. You really need to understand the whole play. Maybe the play for you is just speculating the land, getting it shovel ready, getting it to the market and selling shovel ready land for developers and investors that have that level of experience that we discussed previously in the podcast. Amy, good morning and welcome. Brief overview, who you are, what you do, and thoughts to the discussion this morning. Land and development tips, build to rent, and spec build.
Good morning, Joe. Sorry for being late to the party. I am Amy Palvido. I'm a real estate technology founder of a company called Max. I'm also the chair of the U.S. PropTech Council, which is the trade association for the real estate technology industry in the United States. Longtime real estate investor and developer, so this is right up my alley. I was developing build-to-rent multifamily for a long time. And did a lot of renovations on a lot of homes. For tips for land and development, if we're talking right now, it's very difficult for any sort of if you can make a development work, you have to really learn to hone your numbers and understand that pricing of any sort right now is in flux. It's like it was obviously during the supply chain shortages of 21, but I've been a contractor and a builder for a long time, since like 2003, and we've had this phenomenon before. There's always a supply chain shortage. There's always a shortage of some construction material. So you when you budget now, especially right now, you have to take into account. You have to have a good contingency for cost overruns. And the only thing that really makes sense, and what a lot of developers are doing now, is they're partnering with landowners. So the person that already owns the land would come into a deal. So a lot of developers are looking for folks that own land. So if you want to get into the game and you can find land that you think makes sense, and you've done your understanding of the numbers on this is in the path of progress. This, and you understand what the zoning regulations are, and it makes sense from a zoning perspective, and you can de-risk some of that land acquisition right now. This is a really good play for you, because that's the biggest hurdle for a developer is having the land acquisition as part of the overall project. You'll wait for a good 18 to 24 months of that land sitting idle. And so if you want to make that play, and you have the ability to do the land, we call it land banking, you can make some pretty good money that way, because it's the biggest hurdle. So what you do, and even if you can get it to post entitlements, like if you figure out what this is a really good play for, and you can get it through the entitlement process because you happen to have a buddy, or you can play the long game, a buddy at the development department or the building department where it's zoned, you can make some pretty good money right now. So anyway.
So, so you're saying as an investor, Amy, let me get myself straight. So, because a lot of people below don't really, you know, they're not developers. They're beginning investors. They're licensed realtors. So somebody can come in, talk to somebody that has the land. Maybe they can obtain a option on the land, right? Partner with a new construction contractor or developer and squeeze out a piece of action for themselves, kind of like the third wheel in the deal if they know how to kind of leverage understanding the initial cost to get approved and maybe even understand tax credits that are in the market there that can monetize the debt overall long term. Is there a play for the common investor to kind of wiggle out a difference in the deal by obtaining control of the land through the current owner and then squeezing out a percentage of ownership with a developer? Have you seen that, or is that something that's far-fetched?
I think well, there's always deals like that where people are getting part piece of the pie because they found the deal, right? They can demand certain things as part of percentages of the sponsorship general partnership, right? So that's not. But I think right now the deal won't ever go through because unless they're quarterbacking a deal where the landowner is going to give the land as a part of the development, and then that landowner gets a percentage of the partnership, and then therefore they went and found this, and they get a percentage of the partnership too. So I have seen some of those in the past. So if you're a realtor who's good at bird dogging, or land really well, and owners, because and that they're willing to, they don't have the development expertise, but they know that it's a good piece of land and they want to make money on it. And you as a realtor can put those pieces together. Yeah, you should demand a piece of that pie, right? Yeah. So that's the play right now. That's the only way things are gonna get done. Finding the land and getting it under contract is not going to work because the developer still has to go get loans on that land and the carrying cost of those loans, and it's just not something that pencils right now. But if you can find a landowner who's willing to pitch it in as part of the deal process, then yes.
Interesting. So land development costs they can vary depending on a number of factors, like what Amy's talking about. You have site preparation, you have civil engineering, you have permits, you have land costs, you have delays. You got to understand the regulatory engagement in that market, whether it's local or county. You got to understand tax credits. There's like different tax credits by state. Like in Jersey, a big play right now is Pinelands credits for development. I'm working with a client right now. We're doing the motel conversion into the multifamily. He's got Pineland credits because it's on a big tract of land, but there's another piece of property next to it, close to 40 acres. There's a building on it, but he could build out 60 to 100 townhomes and rent them out at Section 8 if you wanted to, $3,000 a pop. So if he could figure out how to leverage the tax credits, so say his overall cost is, I don't know, I'm just using a number, 3 million. And his tax credit brings down that debt of 3 million to, I don't know, overall the loan to 2 million, but and the back end value is 4. That's a lot less over leveraging of a project. And you'll find that in more suburbia, rural area opportunities right now where they're building these out. Now, in the urban settings, when you have blighted properties, the cities will jump in and provide tax credits, whether it's an abatement or some form of overall tax credit during the whole time of ownership of that developer, with the incentive maybe to make them individually deeded, where if they could sell them back to the individuals that live there, there's another opportunity down the road. It's not going to be immediate because a lot of these people don't qualify to buy the house immediately, but they qualify over time by having money into the deal as they progress living there. And then the deferred maintenance is lower because they're taking care of the home, hopefully in the thought that they're going to actually own it in time. So you got to understand this process and what Amy's talking about, from the land control, is it worth staying in to get that recognition of new construction experience? And how do you squeeze that piece of the action for yourself out? So it's interesting to kind of take into perspective how to get that experience in new construction so you could do your own new construction with a lender, right? If we go back to the 6 questions I asked, again, we'll just redo them so people, if we miss it in the beginning and they're just jumping in now, these are 6 questions every investor asks, every lender that asks an investor, right? First question, how many flips have you sold in the last 4 years? How many rehabs for rental for retained in the last 4 years? How many rentals acquired in the last 4 years? How many ground up construction sold in the last 4 years? How many ground up construction retained as a rental in the last 4 years? And the last is property rehab completed and sold as a GC for third party investor in the last 4 years. Amy, did you have something to add?
Yeah, I will say that, if all of that's very, very true, right? They want their, lenders obviously want to do their due diligence on who they're lending to. But you can, as a realtor, if that's the game you want to get into, you can start building those relationships with those developers that are actively looking for deals, and you can become a part of that partnership so you can kind of get that experience. But I will say that even if it's, but you can also get in on a development deal if you work a deal for the exit strategy. So a friend of mine did this down in Savannah, Georgia, where he was never a developer before, hadn't been a developer. He owned like self storage units, and then wanted to get into multifamily. So he worked a deal where he already had an exit strategy with the housing authority. They were gonna, all they wanted him to do was build it, and they were gonna buy it from him. So he got the development experience because he had an exit strategy already worked out for the deal. So that might be another way too. If you can look, there's a housing crisis, y'all. There is, and the housing authorities realize this. So it was outside of Savannah. They were building 56 townhomes on a piece of land. He just worked the deal. He got the landowner to kind of, we got to buy the land really, really cheap, and then the housing authority gave him the credibility that he needed in order to go get the loans to the local bank. And it just, from a political standpoint, this was checked all the boxes, was a great statement that they could put out in the press. And when you get into real estate development, that's one of the things you understand is that it's a political game. I mean, sometimes it's very political, and if you can partner with a municipality and they can solve a problem by you creating especially a housing development that's affordable, you'll get people to listen. So that might be another way to kind of get in the game if that's what you're after.
Excellent, Amy. I really appreciate that, and I'm glad you came in at post soccer mom test this morning.
Yeah, we're doing the rodeo. We're about to leave and head down to San Antonio against the game.
The rodeo. Oh my goodness. There is a rodeo near us. It's called Cowtown. I've never been to it, but I do want to go see it. I heard it's really cool.
Oh, I'm just calling that. That's how I wrangle up my children in the morning.
Oh, okay.
That rodeo.
Oh, okay. That's a whole that to me that's herding cats. That's a whole nother yeah, that's my expression for that. So, how to budget effectively, right? You got to engage with professionals early on this, right? You got to understand surveys, you got to understand environmental testing. Should be done at the earliest to foresee plan for potential issues on a development, right? You got to factor in time because delays in getting permits, changes in zoning, or unforeseen site conditions can extend your project timeline, resulting in additional costs. And establish contingencies. Be prepared for the unexpected. Unplanned expenses are an integral part of the development of land and sites. I'm going to go back to Joseph. Joseph, you've been listening a lot of chatter here. What's your thoughts as a real estate investor, especially in our local environment? What would you give advice to somebody or suggestions in land development or new construction now hearing this conversation?
Well, there's a lot to learn there, right? Having plans ready, doing a shovel ready deal where you're selling the property. I met a wholesaler on Wednesday night that is just specializing in flipping land, flipping the contracts on land. So it's definitely an avenue to explore. But again, you have to do a lot more due diligence. You know, if the land is buildable, there's a lot of opportunities out there, right? Melissa mentioned that there's places giving property out for free for you to develop land. So definitely something to consider. I mean, I'm a novice in this arena, so it seems like Amy's the expert. So I will defer to her.
There you go. Thank you. You know, BTR homes can cost more comparable to apartments, more multifamily, but they offer a solution for people who may not able to afford home ownership. BTR homes can cost between, 1,500 and 3,500 a month for rent, depending on the size, type, amenities of the property. Renters may pay 10 to 20% premium over similar sized apartments. Demand for BTR homes is high and the market is growing. Single-family BTR homes are the fastest growing subsector, with a 40% increase in the number of units since 2022. Build-to-rent communities can offer perks like community gardens, maintenance-free backyards, and solar panels. BTR homes are considered a safe investment because BTR market is well established and trusted. However, it's important to conduct thorough market research before making any decisions. As a BTR niche evolves, prices may increase to reflect a greater variety of sizes and amenities. With this volatile market, like, yeah, everybody's screaming rates are coming down, but you're not seeing people coming off the sidelines. They don't trust any of the economy news. Like, nobody trusts the local TV channels at this point. They're I think there's a larger percentage of individuals doing their own research on various sites. Like yesterday, I was talking to my processing department. We were talking about, hey, is there going to be a reset in the pricing? Shouldn't there have been one already? And he's like, listen, I'm looking at 3 different reports, and they're really giving me 3 different feelings, and I got to kind of find the one that makes the most amount of sense to what I'm seeing in what we're seeing in inbound on loans. So we got, I had right now probably 2 or 3 inquiries for new construction this past week. None of them are selling the properties to flip. All of them plan on holding them. All of them are building them out as 2-family houses with the intent maybe down the road that they could sell it off to an owner occupied to house hack. But initially, they have no plans of thinking they're going to sell it as new home flips. Their whole intention and how they're renovating building these properties out is to rent these out for at least the next 3 to 5 years. So what do they know that I don't know? Or what do I know that they don't know? I think they're being smart. They have tax incentives by the city, they have tax incentives by the county, and they also have tax incentives by the state. They have 3 different tax credits coming to them just to build out 50 townhomes. Now, again, building out 50 townhomes is not as easy as you think. What if it's in a forestal area and you got trees that knock down, you got to bring in bulldozers, and you bulldoze down a certain area, and then all of a sudden you come up upon an environmental waste dump that nobody knew about 100 years ago, right? I don't know if anybody is familiar with the Jersey City market of New Jersey, North Jersey. They built on environmentally contaminated land. Somebody didn't do their homework right. They brought out one of these Richter things to see what the radiation level's at, and it was like at the highest point. So people living there are getting cancer and all kinds of craziness. I think they've done some things, but I mean, how much can you do when you already have the houses built on the land already? So somebody didn't do somebody got paid to not let people know. And the build to rent concept now is going to be scrutinized even more because of all these past mistakes by bad developers, bad politicians, bad everything. They're just not going to let that stuff slide through as easy. And there's too much accessibility and visibility on social media to allow a lot of that stuff not to come to the forefront. Amy, some additional thoughts to my mindset to build the rent over the next 3 to 5 years.
Oh yeah, build a rent. So just the evolution of it, for sure. I mean, first of all, that whole thing building on a brownfield site is not. That was somebody's. That was stupid. They should have recognized that before they even started doing anything. But so build a rent is going through an evolution. Originally, what the cool thing is about build a rent, and for if you're doing anything larger than say, 2 units or 4 units, if you're doing 2 to 4 units, you can still qualify differently. But if you're doing like say 50 townhomes on a property, you're going to have to make a decision about, okay, there were some build to rent developments. They were all on one piece of land, because when you're doing larger units like that, it's multifamily financing. It's not like you're getting the construction loans. They consider it multifamily. It is basically, they call it horizontal multifamily. That's how they finance these deals. So if you've been a multifamily developer, then it's easy to transition into build to rent. But some of the early build to rent developers were building like say 40 homes on one piece of land. So in order for them to exit, they were going to have to exit to a multifamily owner. You can't sell them off piecemeal, right? Because it's on one piece of land. They're not deeded separately. I think what's going to transact in the future, though, is to have a greater exit strategy, is to actually have to go through the process of parceling these out separately so you can sell them off onesie twosies, right? If you wanted to. If you exit and do it that way, because I think that maximizes your returns. If you do it that way, not everybody who's a multifamily developer will want to own. I mean, it's just, or a multifamily owner, it's a different kind of ownership. It's a different kind of property management. You have to change the way you do things. So if you were going to get into this game, I would look at making sure that it's either they're on individual parcels or they can be separated out that way, because I think you'll have a greater chance at getting somebody interested. So that's my other half nickel.
Nickel. There we go. Because housing affordability has plummeted, to the lowest level since the 1980s, keeping many Americans staying in the rental market. So as a result, as Amy was saying, these home builders are doubling down on the construction to build to rent homes. New rental homes are especially popular in other, outer suburb cities. Like a lot of city areas, the suburbs are doing better than the urban settings. Like I'll give you an example, like in the Pennsylvania corridor, Philadelphia, Harrisburg, York, the surrounding areas of these cities are doing really well, whether it's new construction or it's doing fix to rent or fix to flip. There's still some good pocketed markets that properties are selling to flip, but it's very specific, and there's reasons. People want to get the hell out of the urban settings with crime and politics and bullshit, and they're just trying to live a normal, quiet life, and they just don't see it in the urban setting, so they're going to the suburban setting. I'm seeing a big push on the border of suburban and rural. I mean, they're eating away at the rural designation in so many different places right now. Like that USDA designation is getting smaller and smaller and smaller as people are going more virtual, and being more entrepreneurial and working on their own and not being obligated working for a company and concerned about job layoffs and benefits and all this other craziness. There's a lot going on here that's justifying the build to rent spec development. And it's not going away. Now, again, I think also, you got that Midwest corridor where the barrier of entry is just lesser expensive. Tax base is lower, insurance is a little better, the cost to build is a little different, the expectations of the finished build is a little different. So many builders are feeling bullish about places that are low on the rental supply. But even in places with substantial rental supply, developers have been able to keep BTR homes mostly full. They have enticed new tenants with concessions such as month of free rent when it's needed. I mean, it's not always the case, but again, this is it's definitely very regional by regional environment. I don't think you're going to see, you know, Florida doing a lot more build to rent right now. I think they're at a saturation point of inventory. I'm hearing some crazy stories of what's going on in Florida right now, specifically because your condo market in Florida dictates a lot throughout the country. Um, and I feel like when you're seeing a higher inventory in Florida, that's definitely showing true secondary home environment impact, retirement money. So there's a lot of things going on there that the media is definitely astroturfing for us to kind of stay warm and fuzzy during this presidential run. You need to be in reality of what's really going on here. Money's getting a little tight. It's getting cheaper as we speak, but it's getting tight. It's being scrutinized. And how you put your money to work and who you partner with, if you're going to go into this where you don't have the experience just yet, you really need to know who your partner is. In any business, specifically real estate. Melissa, some additional thoughts to our discussion this morning: land and development tips, build to rent, and spec build.
Actually, I was going to ask a question. In your lending arena, I know in commercial, because I worked for an environmental site assessment firm years ago. If they wanted a lender, they had to that was required, was to do the ESA. And if it was really hot land, then of course you would have to get the baseline assessment, etc. So you have your benchmark to figure out what you can do on that property and develop it. I always wondered, especially with everybody going into rural, are those going to be required eventually in residential building? This would be a good question for Amy too, I guess.
I'll bounce it off of Amy first, and then I'll give my thoughts. Amy, any thoughts to that? If Amy's still available, she might be.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah, get in the car. Yes, well, even so, it just depends on the state that you're in. Like, so if you're in rural, they might not have the same, like in Texas, in the counties, you don't have to do a whole lot to build there. Like you might go to the county fire department and submit your plans, but it's not like they're having an expert looking at your plans. So when you get out of the municipalities, like in the ETJs or in the county, but so they might not technically be required of you, but if you're an experienced developer, you do it anyway, because if you don't, you're going to get yourself in trouble like the other folks did, right? Where it can't be insured and it can't, things like that.
Absolutely. Excellent. Yeah, it's state regulated. Yeah, Michigan has always been that way. We want to protect our water. So it's now called Eagle, so they can be pretty tough. We had a lot of interaction with them while I was working there too. So very interesting. Awesome. Thanks.
Thanks, ladies. Listen, this is a great discussion to kind of compare apples to apples as an investor. Do I want to do enough flips and enough rehabs to a rental to then justify new construction as an opportunity for myself? Now, again, if I was looking in the tri-state area where I sit today, if I was going to build out property right now to develop and hold, I'd look at a 2 through 4 family. I wouldn't look at single family. That's my personal opinion. I'd look at an area that tax base is good or really good, and the opportunity of migration is going to work in your favor. And to me, right now, that's either Salem County, New Jersey, which was considered one of the poorest counties in the country at one point, and now one of the hottest investor buyer markets in the country at this point. It's kind of crazy how the tables have turned. Or I'd look at Delaware. I mean, there's a lot of land in Delaware. I mean, you could drive down 95 in Delaware and be in forestal areas. Once you get into, I think Kent County is an untapped market right now for land development or land speculation. Make it convenient to to 95 as a corridor, because a lot of people will live in Delaware and work in Washington D.C. or work in Baltimore or the outer area of Baltimore. But you're not far from D.C. when you're in Delaware, but your tax base is insanely low, whether it's a home or new construction. And there is a lot of institutional money coming into that market. So you got to follow where where are the institutional investors putting their money? Where are the hedge funds putting their money? They're putting their money in areas where they know people will migrate to. I really believe that Delaware could be a hidden market for new construction for the smaller developer or the mid-sized developer for that matter. And maybe that there's an opportunity to partner with those individuals to get new construction recognition on your resume so you can start doing the builds yourself and hiring out, project managers and GCs. But you got to get that experience somehow. So I think this was a really strong discussion today. We try to tackle new subjects every Saturday and Sunday. This is our 64th episode. I want to thank our moderators for a very, really their personal thoughts. I mean, a lot of all of this is pretty unscripted. I want it to be very real. We talked about my podcast at last night's event. I'm not a fan of doing the one-on-one podcast. I like involving multiple people to have a lot of interaction. I love the different varied opinions, and that's why this podcast is doing well. We are doing some enhancements over the next 90 days. We're going to be impacting on TikTok very soon, Instagram video work, and we're doing some additional work on YouTube. We're going to be really making some advancements. I'm finishing up our studio here at my office, my home office, where I'll be doing the podcasting from. You'll see some new designs coming out and some new logos coming out as well. We have a great mastermind event Monday night at my office in Philadelphia. If you're in the area, please come by. It's 6:30 to 8:30. We will do it more of a Zoom. We're not going to put it on Clubhouse. It's a little too much going on. So we're going to do Zoom, where you can follow up with that as well on our website at creativebirdstrategies.com. It'll be set up as a Zoom link, not as a podcast. But I look forward to tomorrow morning's discussion at 9:30 a.m. at Eastern Standard Time. I want to thank our sponsors. I want to thank Perkatech. I want to thank MB Capital. I want to thank Realty 411 and Lenmark providing insight and strategy to real estate professionals throughout the country. And my quote this morning: people will hate you, they will rate you, they will shake you, and they will try to break you. But how strong you stand is what makes you. Everybody have a blessed Saturday morning. We'll see you tomorrow morning at 9:30 and have a great Saturday. I'll be ending the room in the next 30 seconds.